So he's manipulating the gun. There's another angle on this that kind of shows that, how he's kind of manipulating. He goes right over to the ammo and is asking for the ammunition. She's, you know, you can kind of assume what's going on here, and she gives us a statement. She gets a little bit hanked because he's asking for the ammunition, and he's getting a little bit agitated.
He's still holding the weapon.
Yeah, the weapon does have a lock on it, and theoretically it's not supposed to be fired with the lock on it, but it's the wrong lock, as it turns out. So as you'll see later as this thing unfolds, the weapon is able to be fired. So she's trying to stall for time here, and he's getting agitated, and he keeps telling her to open it, and he kind of raises the butt of the gun at one point, and according to her, he threatens to break the case to get to the ammo, and you can see he's trying to get it open with his hand there, and then he begins shaking. You'll see the actual sign and start shaking there too. And you can see he kind of raises up the gun there, and she finally concedes and opens up the ammo and gives it to him. Those two people, that guy and his kid, had nothing to do with this at all.
So now he's running out?
Yeah, so now he leaves. So he's got to go all the way, you know, back up to the front of the store. This is our guy here.
You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. I got mail.
So, a couple things I think that are important. You know, when we first come across this guy, he's not somebody who's troubled in the sense that, you know, they're not the typical I want to hurt myself kind of guy. This guy is very animated, and he's agitated, and you know, the officer says you don't want to do this, and he, you know, puts the gun to his own neck, yells, you know, a number of profanities, and then proceeds to briskly proceed southbound away from the officer.
He's got his gun to his neck, and he is now walking southbound towards the next block from Berlin Game. I'm staying back at a distance. Half of units come in from the south to the north.
So here's another thing. Obviously, you see a pedestrian walking. He's getting ready to turn here onto what is Coca-Cola Drive. And if you're familiar with that area, obviously Coca-Cola company is there. Fairly large business. It has, you know, I don't know, 150 employees or so. And on the other side of that is Sergeant Control, which has several hundred employees as well. So he's now moving in a direction that's dangerous for others, and is heightening our concern about what this guy may be intending to do.
He still has the weapon. Now we want Business Park Drive and Coca-Cola Place. Make no left. Put the gun down! Just put the gun down!
So again, you have commands that are being ignored. Put the gun down. Put the gun down. He's not doing that. He's doing just the opposite. He's holding on to the gun and continuing to walk away from the officer.
Are you walking towards the burn truck?
Yeah, 10-4. Bring up a unit coming from south to north on the frontage road.
That's frozen.
Keep everybody away. I have two deputies on the Coca-Cola.
He's got, it's locked. He can't get.
Okay, at this point, the citizen has pulled up alongside of the officer and is yelling at him, telling him he can't shoot it. So the guy's turned around. Right now, he's turned around and he's pointing the gun at the officer. He lowers the gun right at the officer. The officer completely misses that. When we interview him, he doesn't realize that because he's talking to the citizen who's next to him. So he tells the officer, you know, he can't shoot it. It's got a lock on it. The officer says, "Are you sure?"
Get the lock off.
I'm positive.
Sure?
I'm positive.
I can't.
It's locked.
So the officer moves up thinking the gun can't be fired.
What do you want me to have?
Okay,
And he shows,
never mind.
yeah, it can be. So now we've got a number of other things that we need to consider. Obviously, this thing is escalating almost by the minute as he proceeds to walk away from the officer. failing to obey commands. We know he's got a high-powered rifle. We know now that he's not afraid to fire the rifle and that he's able to fire the rifle. And those are very important things for us to pick up on and acknowledge as we move into this incident.
This guy is definitely unlocked now. He's definitely loaded. Have you be prepared?
Stop running towards it, dumbass! You don't have a gun or a vest on!
Is it subject shooting or did you shoot?
David did not shoot. Unit right there, just stand off, the gun is loaded. Unit!
So he begins to get, obviously the officer's concern is heightened because he now has the other officer who's coming around the other side and blocking the street, which is good. These officers get out, they exit, get behind the vehicle for cover. This guy has a high-powered rifle, so he's at the advantage from if this thing goes to a shootout kind of situation. He's now crossing in front of what is the self-storage facility, and this next driveway that he gets to is the entrance into Sergeant Control, and right across the street is Coca-Cola. So the concern here, obviously, is you can't let him get into one of these businesses. And you're kind of in a situation where you're hoping he puts the gun down, but how much time do you give him before you take some sort of an action? And so those are the things that are going through an officer's mind during something like this. At what point are we going to stop this threat? Because he's clearly not doing what we tell him to do, and he's, as we find out later, prone to violence, robbing 7-Elevens, lighting churches on fire, and breaking into homes, home invasions, and stealing vehicles.
On Hotel Park, stay off.
Now another officer has arrived, Officer Rapico, has arrived behind and turned the corner and sees the subject, sees him walking towards Sergeant Control, and he makes a decision that he's not going to allow him to go any further.
He's down.
Sergeant, all officers are okay.
And from this point on, it's basically rendering aid. And well, the county attorneys reviewed the use of force, as they do in all deadly force situations, and gave a declination letter, as they did in the previous officer-involved shooting, indicating that there is no cause for, or there's not sufficient justification for charges to be filed for aggravated assault. So now we will do the process of evaluating the officer's action and the point at which he made the decision to use deadly force, and we'll ultimately come to a conclusion on what happened with that. You know, I've had the benefit, obviously, in preparation for these interviews, to review everything, and so I have, my thoughts on it, and I have a pretty clear picture now, having the benefit of listening to the officers and what their thought process was and what they were doing, and watching the video and piecing all of that together. So, I have that benefit where the board doesn't have that benefit yet, because they're just now getting the material. I can tell you that preliminarily, I have my position that the officer made a split-second decision, a very difficult decision, no doubt. And people can sit back and argue the merits of what he did, and some people could argue he should have waited another 15 seconds or another 5 seconds. Other people could say they should have acted quicker. But here's the reality as I look at it. You had hundreds of innocent people in this area that were all potential victims of this guy, who is clearly not an innocent person. He's a man bent on a crime spree. And allowing him to continue really puts us in a position of having to justify, why didn't you do something sooner? Because my wife was taken hostage, or my child was shot, or something else. So this thing plays out. It can play out into something extremely violent and extremely bad for the community. And as it turns out, it's not one of those all's well that ends well kind of thing. I think that's too simple and too cliche to say. But in reality, everybody walked away from this, including the suspect. And if Officer Rapico doesn't take that action at that point, and this guy does continue to the business, officers are going to have to engage him, and they're going to end up in a shootout. And that guy potentially ends up dead because of that, or one of our officers ends up dead, or a citizen ends up dead. So, you can, as you play this out, you can extrapolate, Officer Rapico's decision ultimately may have saved this guy's life, because 2 days later, he's released from the hospital. Now, are we fortunate that that's the case? Absolutely. The guy could have very well died in that collision, but he didn't. And he's now behind bars in the Pima County Jail, awaiting to be tried for the crimes that he committed. So, our community's safe, our officers are safe, and even the suspect is safe and is going to stand trial. So, nothing's pretty about this, but in the end, you walk away going, very fortunate, very grateful.